I'm Jean-Pierre Blais. I'm the chair of the Canadian regulator, the CRTC, converged regulator. And this morning we will, this afternoon we'll be talking about responding to disruption, the rise of multi-faceted communications, evolving business and policy models. And we're very fortunate this afternoon to have our panel members here. Nolo Letede, and I love his name because in French that is television, so it's entirely appropriate. He's the chairman of MultiChoice South Africa Group. Chris Hutchins, who's VP European Policy at Liberty Global, and Stephen Collins, who's VP Corporate Affairs at Microsoft. I invite you to, in the interest of time, to take cognizance of their biographical information, which are provided in the document, and you'll see how impressive a panel we have. Now, I've been asked before I turn to each of the panel members to make short presentations, and then we'll engage in discussion. I've been asked to summarize, by way of introduction, the discussions that have occurred at the regulatory forum, which are relevant to the discussion of the panel here. And I believe that the word disruption was nowhere on the panel descriptions at the regulators forum, but it was an enduring theme that came up in almost every panel. So it was very much what was top of mind for us. And although, as others have mentioned, the reality in our different markets, from very sparsely populated or dense markets, different legal frameworks, or in different historical markets, we were all coming to a set of issues that were quite similar. And certainly some recurring themes, as we reflected on the path to take, included things such as outdated business models, and we needed to get our heads around that reality. The incredibly fast pace of change, not just technology, but consumer behavior. The interdependence of media and telecommunications. The impact of the global supply chains on domestic markets, the threat of social cohesion and plurality and freedom of speech in a world of bits, obviously the question of net neutrality, the rise of bundling and packaging as it challenges issues and approaches. So you're tempted sometimes to take the way forward on a piecemeal approach, whereas a more holistic, interconnected, converged way forward might be more appropriate. There was also frustration expressed by some about the legislative regimes in a sense, frozen in time when everything was changing about us, and we were maybe not having the right tools, legislatively at least, to deal with the fast-changing and disrupted world. The balancing that regulators always have to do between bold solutions and predictability. So we as regulators obviously have a duty to be transparent and predictable. The current asymmetry in the marketplace due to technology and the impact on the regulatory regimes because of very different platforms. And we also reflected on the role of the regulator in this disrupted environment with respect to clarity of outcomes and transparency of our actions and the evaluation of our own effectiveness, and the need to research and to track this fast-paced change. Although we've always been in the mode of catching up, I think the consensus developed that this is a very different type of catching up because it's moving so quickly. And we talked about the proportionality and the balance of our approaches to get the right balance between investments and stimulating investment on the one hand, but also having the right outcome for consumers that sometimes reflect in the short term on quality of service, affordability, without necessarily reflecting on long-term consequences that we have to look at. So, frankly, I think if I were to boil it down, we were all reflecting how to deal with the long-term public interest in a very fast-moving environment. And our panelists to this right now will be able to contribute to that reflection and contribute to that dialogue. So I'd like to invite our first speaker to come on up, and I think it's Nolo will speak first. Okay, Nolo, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm based in South Africa, and as you've heard, I'm in the right profession, television. The name is Le Tele. I've been with MultiChoice, which is a company that provides pay TV services across the continent of Africa. We're in about 50 countries now, and it's very similar to what you would call here BSkyB or DirecTV in America. We provide over 100 channels of various content. And it's from this perspective that I just wanted to share with you how Africa is evolving. In many ways, Africa, due to the challenges that face it, there's very little comparatively by way of fixed line infrastructure, fixed line broadband, and Africa is addressing these challenges in its own unique way. And as you'll see, we are going to look at the connectivity aspect, devices, and content, and how this is affecting, for instance, the pay TV business and broadcast models across the continent. It's not a homogeneous market. So if we start with connectivity, there's quite an explosion of connectivity to the rest of the world via undersea cables. And pretty much all these have been launched now, except for two. The red one that goes underneath, which connects the BRICS countries, such as Brazil, China, etc. And then the green one as well will only be commissioned in 2014. I should just add that inland, however, there's very little by way of broadband connectivity via fixed line infrastructure. When we look at internet penetration, if you compare with some of the first world and developed countries, Africa is still quite a long way to get there. Countries like Morocco, Egypt, are as much as 50% or thereabouts, but the rest of the countries are much lower. South Africa has even been overtaken by Nigeria and Kenya, for example. You compare that with Korea and the other countries which are well over 60%, 70%. So it shows you there's quite a long way to go. Interestingly, this connectivity, it's coming through mostly the broadband and internet connectivity is coming through mobile phones. And if you can see the penetration of the African countries, I mean, South Africa has 134%, and that's because of hand-me-downs phones and people having more than one phone. But generally across Africa, the growth of mobile has been phenomenal, and the connectivity via internet is by far the greatest method of connecting. And if you look at the countries that people connect to internet first via their mobile phones, again you can see 60% for Nigeria, South Africa 57%, Ghana 55%, 54% for Kenya, and so on. So when we're talking internet connectivity, mobile, think mobile usage first and foremost. And this is, of course, fueling a lot of growth. For example, before perhaps I get to Facebook users, which is as much as 50 million users across the continent. But the sort of speeds for connectivity, Nigeria already achieves something like 2.7 megabits per second. South Africa download speeds are about 9.6 megabits per second, and upload speeds of about 2.3. Again, in South Africa is a mixed bag. You have fiber to the curb in the metropolitan areas. You have mobile usage, but the last mile still very much belongs to the incumbent telco, and access to that is still an issue on the regulatory front. In Kenya, where mobile money is very, very big, there's a platform called M-Pesa. Pesa in Swahili means money, and of course M-Pesa means mobile money. It's huge. It's been around for a few years, and it's used for paying bills, for transferring money, for receiving money from overseas, for banking, for commerce transactions. And it's as much as 74% of the adult population have used it and continue to use it. The average transaction is about $30, and 31% contribution to the GDP. So this is very much something which has been exported from Kenya to other countries. It's catching on in some, it's not catching on in others. Again, in South Africa, it didn't catch on simply because of the high penetration of ATMs and probably a relatively better infrastructure. There has been also, perhaps I should also mention that the mobile subscriptions have risen from 90 million 7 years ago to just around 500 million, 475 million. And here's one example. I put this up because Google are running a pilot in New Zealand where they floated balloons up in the upper atmosphere over a defined area, and these balloons are drifting with the wind but generally stay in the same place, and these are providing internet connectivity to the people on the ground. And Google came and visited us quite recently. This, by the way, this pilot is still running. It started in June, so we'll see how successful it is. But they would like to export this model for Africa. And we talked, and they also would like to provide to Africa content like video content and so on that would be coming from satellites down to subscribers on the ground. But we told them that we're already doing this, and I'll explain why in a minute. Just looking at the South African market, and here you can see that penetration is mainly through small screens. These are your mobile phones, which is the blue, and then the yellow is your large screens, being your laptops and the like. So it just illustrates again that mobile phones are very much what is used for connectivity. The devices, if you just look on the right-hand side, the countries that have above 100% are those in yellow. You can see Southern Africa and something in Central Africa. And then the dark blue is 60 to 100% and so on. Most devices in Africa that are used are feature phones. They're not your smartphones. Smartphones are growing but slowly, but over 80-90% in Africa is your feature phones, your simple, almost dumb phones. But the growth of data usage is again, almost exponential. The devices such as we broadcast to is your decoders, as well as tablets, and even they call them DVB-H devices, which are your phones that can receive a video transmission. With this, we are able to provide, for example, box office type services, which is video on demand. Because our decoders, we have about 7 million subscribers across the continent of Africa, with 4.5 million being in South Africa. These decoders, because of lack of infrastructure, are not connected online. So for video on demand, we trickle feed and download into your hard drive of your PVR. We download movies, which we replenish every month. And like your minibar in the hotel, what you use, you pay for only for what you use. And to unlock a movie, you would send an SMS code to a defined SMS number. And that's actually working very well. And this is something that we told Google that, look, we're already doing this in Africa, and it's, it's working successfully. You're not bringing anything new. On the content side, I said it's not a homogeneous market. You cannot do one size fits all and just provide uniform content and think everybody everywhere will want to view it. You have to customize. We have portals, for example, on SuperSport, which is one of our channels. We provide sport content just over the air, but also online. And we provide this to users, for instance, in Swahili, that middle, you don't have to read it, but that's in Swahili, and even in Pidgin English in Nigeria to those users. And we're getting lots of hits, as much as 6 million, for example, during AFCON, the Africa Cup of Nations soccer. Users as many as that actually may access the particular portal. We also provide various content. It was necessary that in West Africa, we provide content over satellite in languages like Hausa and Yoruba, and in East Africa, providing content in Swahili. There are, in Nigeria, for example, the service that's called Iroko. I didn't put it up here, but Iroko provides online content which consists of movies from the local scene, the movie industry. It's called Nollywood. It's a very big industry. And this provides content to viewers in the diaspora, mostly Nigerians around the world. And Ndani up there is a local, again, online portal that's providing movies and celebrity shows. And it's supported by one of the big banks, Guarantee Trust in Nigeria. And again, it's very popular. People have their mobile phones that they can use and devices that they can use to receive this kind of content. So I think with that, I will stop here and we'll take questions later on. Thank you very much.
Chris?
Thanks very much. My name is Chris Hutchins. I'm from Liberty Global. I'm pleased here to be addressing delegates here today. We've been a long-term supporter and sponsor of IIC events. I'm pleased that this is another opportunity for us to address you here today. I'm going to look at the issue and the subject of disruption from two specific aspects. I think the first is the disruption that's being caused to our video business from the rise of over-the-top platforms. And the second will be consumer trends and how they're evolving and how our consumers have a greater desire for mobility and how we're looking to capture that value. But perhaps a little bit about Liberty Global. First of all, the last time I addressed an IIC audience, I couldn't talk about our acquisition of Virgin Media. But as of June of this year, we have expanded our footprint into the UK. We've added another 5 million markets, 5 million customers, and we're now operating in 12 EU markets. So for a total of 25 million customers across our footprint, and more than 90% of our revenue is now European. So we've been investing in cable infrastructure for more than 20 years in this area, and we see the growth prospects to be very healthy, and we continue to look for new opportunities in the European space. To put it into context, the video business that we've been in for more than 30 or 40 years has been in a constant state of flux. We are well used to innovating and to dealing with disruption to business models. We've seen various waves of transformation of the video business. I'd say we're now in the fourth or the fifth wave, and today we're experiencing desires for consumer portability. We're partnering with content providers more actively than ever, and we're more focused on the user experience. So we're familiar with these disruptive forces and we're trying to address them. And the key thing is we need to continue to have the incentive to innovate and to experiment to ensure that we meet consumers' desires. But what is different today is the pace of disruption is much higher than it has been at any time. We face powerful international brands in our market today who are looking to take a piece of our business, our video business. Some of these operators, notably Netflix, have told us a thing or two about the improvements we need to make for functionality and consumer experience. But today, we still see the over-the-top platforms focusing on non-linear and catch-up products, and that at the moment they are a complement to our existing linear offerings that we are developing. But we are aware that these big, powerful operators can scale quickly and can form content aggregation deals and vendor deals at a rapid pace. So we often get asked, well, the cord's been cut then. Well, in part, yes, the cord is being cut. We have seen a reduction in subscribers and an overall softening of video subscriptions. So over the last 5 years, European cable as a whole has lost 1.4 million homes. But we think this is a healthy sign. It's a sign of strong competition between us and IPTV players and satellite players. But we don't think this cord shaving is the end of the business. It's rather an opportunity for us. And during this same time frame, we've actually added more individual subscription services. So new service contracts. So although the number of households is declining, the number of services that we offer to consumers has been rising. In fact, Screen Digest analysis tells us that for every customer that we've lost, we've added 13 new customers during this time. And that's something that we think is very positive. And we think that it shows the complementarity of over-the-top content and existing linear offerings from the cable operators. And we think this is an opportunity. It allows us to bundle both our video product with our high-speed broadband product. But we're wary not to underestimate the threat that we see today. And we believe that if the case now for the next 3 to 4 years is that disruption to this core video business will be moderate. This will increase if we don't address some of the consumer desires for greater content and greater mobility. So our strategy has been to invest in a new gateway. It's called Horizon. It's very much focuses around integrating the linear TV and the non-linear over-the-top environment into one. And it has a number of wireless routers so that we can ensure consumer mobility to any device within the home. It's very much about content integration, portability, and bringing the user experience to life. Now, obviously in every market, we may not want to get into the curation business, and you may note that our partnership in the UK with Netflix is a different model, and that reflects the very strong level of competition that we see in the UK market. And so it made sense for us to evolve to a different strategy for the UK as opposed to continental Europe. How are we partnering with content providers? Well, we, like our previous speaker, are customizing the content that we receive from broadcasters and that we distribute. We create portals, we create a branded environment for our major broadcasters. Here, this is an example from the Netherlands with RTL at the top. You see the branded environment which supports transactional VOD on our Horizon platform. And below on the right, you see the transactional VOD environment for our previous generation of set-top box. So it's very much about partnering with the content providers. But it's not just about content providers. We also offer web-based applications. And we have an open architecture which attempts to embrace the best of over-the-top within our Horizon gateway. So in the Netherlands, we currently have 52 apps within our Horizon store and 17 video apps, including YouTube. It's a similar story where we've launched Horizon elsewhere, in Switzerland and in Ireland, and this very much represents our strategy. A quick word or two about mobility. More and more of our customers have more devices that they want to be able to use seamlessly in the home. They also want to be able to use these outside of the home. And we've invested very strongly in making a nomadic Wi-Fi offering available in some of our core markets within our footprint. And we're also examining partnerships with other operators to create a national footprint of Wi-Fi offering. And this would meet the expectation that consumers have for greater mobility and lower price for their data needs. And this, we think, is, if you will, a fifth play to the quad play market that we are looking to develop and embrace at the moment. And with 46% of our consumers taking a bundle, we very much see the integration of Wi-Fi and mobility together with the core video and high-speed broadband products as a recipe for growth as we look forward. And just to finish with a couple of concluding remarks, we don't see over the top today as a threat. It's an opportunity. It's not a pure substitute for our service. It complements what we do, and we're looking to partner with them and to embrace. And to do that, we need to invest actively in our platform, Horizon, TiVo, and to ensure that we offer a strong consumer proposition. And we think in-home mobility is key, and that's why we're investing in Wi-Fi. We believe these new content models and these partnership structures should be encouraged, and that regulation should be promoting this kind of experimentation. And longer term, in terms of broadband pricing and broadband quality, we think regulation should allow sufficient flexibility for creativity and for managed services. But that's where I'd like to leave it now. I hope I've kept more or less within my time. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for our panelists so far, but let's ask for Stephen to make his presentation.
I need to move those slides on. I'm not going to have any slides. Although I work for Microsoft, I've never really mastered PowerPoint. So I have a sort of short prepared notes here, but before I do that, maybe just a couple of things. I mean, it's really great to be here. Since moving over from Skype to Microsoft a couple of years ago, they don't let me out very much. So it's really nice to be back at the IIC. Thank you, Andrea and Fabio, for inviting me. The second thing is just to reflect on what we've heard already so far today, and I think it's quite remarkable. We've heard a whole range of views and priorities and business plans, regulatory thoughts from a whole host of different actors, both on from the public sector and from the private. And what's remarkable about it, I think, is this is the first time we're all really talking about needing something new and starting to embrace disruption, change, and an inherent instability that there is developing in the market. And I really hope that over the next sort of day and a half that continues. And I would say, I was at the ETNO conference yesterday, which wasn't so much a conference, more of a wake. It felt like somebody had died, and everybody was very, very down. So I don't know if Luigi's still here. Maybe he's gone off to pay his respects. I don't know. The contrast between the two is again remarkable. So we should keep that in mind. We've moved a whole long way, even in the last 12 months, let alone the last 24 and 36. And it's so encouraging to hear Ed Richards talk about where regulation, separation of infrastructure and content, for example, is heading, and even Randolph Stevenson from AT&T, I mean, I didn't agree with probably 60% of what he said, but there's a proper plan there. There's a real vision, a business vision for the future, and he's trying to execute that. I mean, it's a great thing. So without further ado, Chair, because I know we don't have much time, let me turn to the topic at hand, which is responding to disruption. And I was struck really by the loaded nature of the session's title. This responding to disruption suggests to me a kind of reactive modus, an action to try to curb disruption and re-establish a quieter, more orderly time. And as we've already heard today, that boat has sailed. The promise of ubiquitous, stable broadband networks and lower retail access tariffs means anyone can be a communications provider, including the end user. The public internet provides a blank canvas for anyone from the largest corporation to the mythical two guys in a garage to create exciting content services and apps and to distribute them worldwide at little or no cost. And today we're at a point of, I would say, post-modernity in the communications sector, at least in terms of services provision. There is no hierarchy of services. Circuit switch telephony is no longer superior to internet-based communications in terms of robustness or quality, or it needn't be at least. And in fact, often the reverse is the case. Similarly, price is rarely a differentiator between services, since commoditization of voice and now IM and video is well advanced, and their direct revenue value creeps to zero. It is therefore imperative that we embrace disruption. We must accept that instability, particularly at the services and applications layer of the value stack, is not only a fact of life, but something to be exploited. And then when writing these notes, and maybe this is where it goes horribly wrong, when writing these notes, I tried to think of some non-sectoral examples to illustrate this need. And I came up with two, which are far away from our industry. The first is the common bumblebee, and the second is the European Joint Strike Fighter. Each of them has an inherent instability designed into its DNA, one by Mother Nature, the other by clever engineers in Munich. The instability is what makes them so agile, maneuverable, and able to outwit opponents. Each is able to make multiple adjustments in real time to cope with rapid changes, sometimes even anticipate change before it happens. If you watch the Eurofighter fly at speed, it often looks like it's about to crash, when of course the reverse is the case and the pilot has complete control. So we need to foster this kind of philosophy, I think, in both the business and policy environment of the communications industry. And we need to do so quickly, understanding that some things we try will not work, and we'll have to keep on adjusting and readjusting, trying, failing, until we succeed. And in terms of business models, I mean, there's an interesting tension we see now between vertical and horizontal. It's no surprise to anybody in the audience. A few years ago, the traditional vertically integrated business models we knew started to be usurped in a move towards the horizontal, where the various functions of a communications company were split out: infrastructure, access, devices, content, and services. This horizontal splitting of the layers looked to many of us permanent. However, alongside these two now well-established models, we see the emergence of a second vertically integrated business model, which consolidates some of the players operating in two or more of the horizontal layers. Apple is the most visible exponent, I guess, but you see also Google, Samsung, Amazon, and Microsoft all moving quickly to a joined-up world of devices and services. And they provide these through the integration of the whole value chain. Except this time around, it isn't the whole value chain. None of these companies appears to have any ambition to invest in legacy telecoms, or, with one or two exceptions, NGN fixed infrastructure. I mean, leave Google aside as an exception. Instead, disruption and innovation leads these companies to seek to improve upon legacy infrastructure by developing alternatives. A good example is the announcement last week of Microsoft's conducting of white spaces trials in Glasgow. And Microsoft and others, of course, are also investing. We heard about the Google balloon initiative in Africa. Are also investing in white spaces development in partnership with local network operators in countries in Africa as well. So there nevertheless remains an urgent need for next generation fibre, of course, to be rolled out, both for wholesale and retail access and for offloading and backhaul support for wireless networks. The problem we face, as we all know, is how to stimulate investment in NGNs and do that on a scale, in Europe at least, that is more than single territory. And I guess we'll discuss on the panel at some point the Telecom Single Market Initiative. And one aspect of this, of course, we're addressing now on this panel, is what kind of policy and regulatory framework will we need in order to establish a high-quality infrastructure that supports a thriving services and apps ecosystem on top of it. The starting point should be how to enable new innovative services and tools in order to benefit consumers and increase competition in the market. The consumer should be at the centre of any new policy, and it's reassuring to hear that from several speakers today, including Ed Richards. From there, economic competitiveness and productivity improvements naturally follow. Networks policy should encompass and embrace the imminent changes brought by convergence and the switch to an all-IP environment. Policy should acknowledge the increasing role of internet applications on fixed and mobile devices. This will only happen when we move away from relying on legacy rules and practices. So here comes the regulatory piece, which are voice-driven still for telecoms and essentially analog TV-driven for audiovisual. They're also primarily nationally focused, which is a key point again for EU member states. Many of our existing rules are already or are fast becoming anachronistic in the internet-centric era. So, what do? We suggest policymakers and regulators should, in future, focus their efforts on the transport of data, messaging and content, rather than the creation of the data themselves. What matters in the internet era is that data of any kind, which our economies and societies now rely upon so much, is transported in a way that's most efficient, resilient and affordable to users. This leads us to recommend that telecoms regulation should focus on networks. And again, encouraging to hear Ed Richards say something similar. It should be clearly distinguished from the rules which apply to the applications layer of the value chain, where policymakers should rely primarily on transversal, ex post and competition protection regimes. We can lay this out in 6 key points, or guideposts, if you will. In the interest of time, I won't read them all out. I'll just give you the 6 quick bullets. 1, clearly distinguish between networks and services and match regulatory objectives to the appropriate layer. 2, avoid reflexive inappropriate extension of existing regulations to new contexts. None of this is new, I think. 3, create a favourable climate for investment in both network infrastructure and services. Easier said than done. 4, encourage deployment of innovative lower-cost network solutions. We were talking about white spaces earlier. 5, ensure use of regulatory processes able to keep up with the rapid pace of technical and industry change. And 6, finally, pursue targeted solutions to areas that lack infrastructure. And there we can talk about how universal service funds should be utilised or indeed not utilised. So in conclusion, if we embrace disruption and adopt these 6 key points in our policy making, our industry, we believe, will become more competitive at all parts of the value chain, and shareholders and consumers will be the beneficiaries. Thank you.